Josh from soccerreviewsforyou.com, bringing you a video today to explain stud pressure. You may have heard me say that in some of my review videos before, and some of you guys have asked for clarification in the comment section on what exactly stud pressure is. So I'm going to be answering that in today's video. We're going to discuss what stud pressure actually is. We're also going to discuss how it's caused and how you can go about fixing this problem if you are in fact struggling with stud pressure. So if you're interested in learning more, please stick around and watch the entire video. And with that being said, let's get right into it. So what exactly is stud pressure? It's something that I could very easily explain and end the video in 30 seconds, but that's not my style. That's not how I do things on this channel. We're going to break things down and go into detail and really help you truly understand what stud pressure is, how it's caused, and how you can go about fixing it based on your specific situation. So in order to do that, we're going to be using a Nike Mercurial Vapor 10 as an example. This shoe has no stud pressure issues based on my experience. I'm purely using it as an example. I could have used any shoe. Like I said, I just happened to pick a Vapor 10 because it was the first thing that I saw. So at the core of every single soccer shoe, you're going to find a sole plate. Now the sole plate can be made from plastic, it can be made from other types of materials, it can be a blend of materials, it can be carbon fiber, it really doesn't matter. But what the sole plate is kind of the backbone for the entire shoe. It's the thing that you're going to be standing on every time these shoes are on your feet, and it's going to be one of the main reasons why stud pressure is or isn't an issue for you. Now, obviously you're standing on top of that sole plate, but not directly on top of it. Above the sole plate, you're going to find an insole. That insole can be made again from various types of foams. It can have different thicknesses. It's something that you can interchange on most high-end shoes at least. And again, that's what you're going to be standing directly on top of. So you put your foot in the shoe, it's on top of an insole, which is on top of the sole plate, which is on top of the studs, which is what you're going to find on the underside of that sole plate. Now, a lot of people look at stud patterns and automatically assume that they are designed purely around traction, which is to a certain extent true, but comfort also has to be taken into consideration given the type of sole plate that they've implemented. So sole plates can be thicker, they can be thinner, they can be more flexible, they can be stiffer. Like I said, there's a lot of variety out there just based on the types of materials and the types of design that have been implemented within the sole plate. So yes, traction is taken into consideration, but they also have to make sure that the shoe has balance under your feet in terms of how the pressure is distributed across the bottom of your foot. When you're talking about a running shoe with a flat bottom, the pressure is automatically evenly distributed because the bottom is completely flat. In the case of a soccer shoe, you're going to be distributing that pressure amongst all of the studs that are extending from the sole plate. So if you just put one stud directly in the middle of the forefoot and nothing else, when you stood down on that shoe, you would likely feel pressure on that one stud. So when they design a stud pattern, whatever shoe it may be, they have to make sure that yes, they have the studs there to provide good traction, but at the same time, the positioning, the angle, the size, everything has to be evenly distributed across the bottom of your foot for one, stability, and two, evenly distributed pressure. So you're not actually feeling the studs when you're wearing the shoe. So that's kind of what the core essential of stud pressure is. Stud pressure is when you feel discomfort from being able to feel studs directly under your foot. It's a pressure to a point where, like I said, it's causing you pain. It generally leads to a blister. And it's a very, very annoying and kind of troubling type of sensation because you're generally going to play through it to the point where, like I said, you are going to have issues with discomfort. And it's not till after the fact, once you've actually hurt yourself, that you decide to address the issue. So that's what stud pressure is. It's being able to feel the studs directly under your foot. It can be one stud, it can be multiple studs, to the point where, like I said, it is causing you some kind of discomfort or even leading to some sort of an injury in the form of a blister. So now that we know what stud pressure is and how it would be caused, how can we actually prevent the issue or solve the issue if you're struggling with stud pressure at the moment? That's what we're going to answer next. So what actually causes stud pressure in a pair of soccer shoes? I think that a lot of people will automatically assume that some shoes are better and some shoes are worse when it comes to stud pressure, meaning that you might get stud pressure from a certain shoe due to a flawed design. And I can tell you from experience, being able to have tried several hundred different shoes over the last couple of years, that's not really the case. I would say that 99% of the time, stud pressure is not the fault of the actual design. It's generally the fault of the user. And there's one other possibility that really should be the only reason why you get stud pressure. But what I will say is that most of the time, stud pressure is the fault of the actual user and not the actual shoe itself. So in order to properly explain why stud pressure can happen, there's kind of two situations here: stud pressure in a brand new pair of shoes and stud pressure in an older pair of shoes. So we're going to start off with talking about getting stud pressure in a brand new pair of shoes, which, by the way, really shouldn't happen. This is the situation where it's the fault of the user as opposed to the shoe itself. So the first variable when it comes to getting stud pressure in a brand new pair of shoes is the ground. Now, this is something that I've really been battling on my channel for quite some time now. It is the rule of buying the right stud pattern for the right type of playing surface, meaning that if you play on firm natural grass, buy a firm ground pair of shoes. If you play on soft ground, buy a soft ground pair of shoes. And if you play on artificial grass, buy an AG pair of shoes. It really is that simple. I think a lot of people just don't seem to understand the concept of stud patterns for a specific playing surface. There's a reason why they make those. It's not just for good performance. It's not just for better safety. It's also for optimal comfort. So when you take a firm ground or a soft ground stud pattern and you use it on artificial grass, which is a very shallow playing surface where that long stud has nowhere to go, that's when stud pressure is going to kick in. And again, is that the fault of the design? No, that's the fault of the user wearing the shoe on a playing surface it was not intended to be used on. Again, we broke down kind of the anatomy of a pair of soccer shoes. You have a hard plastic sole plate and a very thin layer of foam kind of separating between you and the bottom of all of these studs. So you really have to make sure that you're using these stud patterns on the proper playing surface, because really all the cushioning in a soccer shoe is being provided by the actual ground. So if the ground is too hard for the stud pattern that you're using, that's where stud pressure is going to come into play, because the bottom of that stud is going to be hitting a hard surface, which in result over time, 20 minutes or so, that's when you're going to start to feel that discomfort. So again, really, really important that you use the right type of playing surface on the right type of with the right type of shoe, So the softer the ground, the less likely you're going to have issues with stud pressure, but the harder the ground, the more likely you're going to have issues with stud pressure. The second reason why you might be experiencing stud pressure in your brand new shoes is the result of sizing. It's really important that your shoes fit you correctly. If your shoes are way too big, you're going to find that your feet on the inside of the shoe don't line up properly with where the studs are actually supposed to be positioned under your foot. Like I mentioned, they designed these shoes around pressure being evenly distributed across the bottom of that sole plate, which is where your foot is supposed to be. So if your foot is, let's say, an inch in the wrong spot, you're going to be applying pressure to a part of your foot that's not supposed to be feeling that pressure, which, like I said, in turn can result in some kind of discomfort. So it's really, really important that your shoes aren't too big. Obviously, if your shoes are too small, you're going to have discomfort for other reasons. But like I said, having the proper fit is really important when it comes to avoiding any kind of issues in the field of stud pressure. So those are the two main reasons why you might be experiencing stud pressure in your new shoes. Again, that's kind of the fault of the user, not so much the shoes themselves. And like I said, we're going to move on next to having stud pressure in a pair of old shoes, which in my opinion is really the only reason why you should be experiencing stud pressure at all, because those first two reasons, as I just explained, are fairly avoidable if you just buy the right stud pattern and buy the right size. Really that simple. So in an old pair of shoes, you have to consider, again, really the only cushioning you're getting from the actual shoe itself is from the insole. And this is definitely the most common result of stud pressure. That insole, very thin layer of foam, it breaks down over time. So your shoes don't necessarily have to be a year old for that insole to break down. That insole might be pretty much completely compressed and very, very flat and lacking any kind of cushion after 2 months of wear. So if you're experiencing stud pressure on a pair of shoes that are a little bit older, take your insole out and just take a look at it. If it looks really, really kind of ragged and broken down and extremely thin and has lost any kind of its sponginess, that's likely the reason why you're having issues with discomfort. Now, replacement insoles for soccer shoes, unfortunately, are a little bit difficult to come by. You kind of just got to find what you can find, going to your local store that might have some insoles and kind of just trimming them down to the exact shape of what you had before, putting those in your shoes and then trying it out. That 90% of the time will solve your issue. So if that's the case, like I said, just check your insole prior to just thinking that you have to buy an all new pair of shoes because of issues with stud pressure, because just changing the insole generally will fix the problem. Now, the last two reasons when it comes to stud pressure in an older pair of shoes, or a used pair of shoes, I should say, these are problems that you can't necessarily fix. Now, just like the insole, the sole plate can break down as well, especially when you're talking about a plastic material. Over time, heat, weight, stress, all of that makes the sole plate a little bit softer. You'll notice this a lot on older shoes, especially in comparison to when they're new. The sole plate just becomes more flexible, more flimsy, I guess is the best way to put it. So because of that, you're going to be able to feel those studs a little bit more than you would have been able to at the start of when the shoes were brand new. So if that's the case, if the sole plate is just becoming very flimsy and breaking down, that's generally a good sign that it's time for a new pair of shoes. You can try changing the insole, but most of the time that's not really going to change the end result if, like I said, the base of that shoe, the backbone of that shoe is broken down. So that is kind of the second reason why in an older pair of shoes stud pressure can be caused. And the final reason is actually has to do with the upper. This is more common with leather shoes, especially once they're older and they've stretched out quite a bit. If your foot is sliding around a lot on the base of the shoe, again, your foot's not going to be positioned in the spots where it's supposed to be in order to have that pressure be evenly distributed. So if your foot is dramatically shifting from side to side, doesn't matter if it's to the left or to the right, you're going to be putting pressure on parts of your foot that aren't supposed to be feeling that pressure. And again, that's going to result in discomfort. So if the upper has kind of deteriorated to the point where it's not holding your foot in place the way it's supposed to be, that can result in discomfort, that can result in stud pressure. And again, the only way to really fix that is just to replace the shoes entirely. But at that point, you're likely due for a replacement anyway. So that's pretty much the gist of stud pressure, all the different reasons why it can be caused and all the different ways that you can go about fixing it. If it's something that you're really struggling with, and it's an issue that just kind of came up all of a sudden, the best thing you can do is change the insole. If that doesn't fix the problem, the shoes just likely need to be replaced because they've been broken down. And like I said, in a new pair of shoes, getting the wrong size and wearing the wrong shoe on the wrong surface can be a major cause of any of your discomfort woes. And again, that's kind of the fault of the user, not so much the fault of the shoes. So like I said, very important that your shoes fit you properly and you buy the right stud pattern for the right playing surface. But that's pretty much it, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed this video on stud pressure, what it is, what causes it, and how you can prevent it. If you have any further questions at all, leave them down below in the comment section for me, and I definitely will get an answer out to you. If you enjoyed today's video, found it helpful and informative, be sure to support it with a like. This is the type of video I really like making on my channel. I feel like when I make these, I'm really helping people out. So if there's any other kind of general topics about soccer shoes that you'd like to see me cover on the channel, leave your suggestions down below in the comment section. I'll take a look at everything you guys have to say. Subscribe if you haven't already for daily videos on all the latest and greatest soccer gear. You can find all my social media information down below in the description as well. And other than that, guys, that's it for today's video. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.